Even though production for the film has stopped for the time being, I am so proud that all of you are enjoying Godzilla Fallout Extinction. With the recent release of Part 3, I am just so blown away by the amount of comments that I've gotten on it. Even for a 27-minute part, and honestly, I'm surprised by y'all's attention span. And all of you seem to really enjoy the third part of the movie, even though it concludes the first half of the film. Now I'm making this video to explain to you all one underlying theme to this that I had specifically written, specifically to make this film a little more realistic. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down the political undertone that is Godzilla Fallout Extinction Part 3. To start off, Hunter, what do you mean by political? Well, if you have seen Part 3, you'll know that there's quite a few scenes that has to do with what's going on in the United States government while this whole situation is going on, focusing on three of the main characters such as the Vice President, Secretary Daniels, and the US President himself. To start off, Part 3 opens up with a meeting happening in the War Room in the Pentagon. May I remind you that there is no such thing as a war room. This whole scene was actually a direct reference to Dr. Strangelove. Even the quote Secretary Daniels says,
"Gentlemen, you can't fight in here, this is the war room!"
But the Vice President is talking with several generals to see how they could resolve this whole situation when Secretary Daniels walks in to break up the argument and reassures them all that they're working to defeat Godzilla, even though they aren't doing such thing. What's happening instead is Secretary Daniels is blocking all news media, basically preventing any word about Godzilla from getting out throughout the country. In real-world terms, this is impossible, especially considering how massive social media is in the current world. And even if the Secretary of Defense had access to do so, this would make him look like a tyrant. But really what Secretary Daniels is seeking from doing this in the movie is political power, which is where the political undertone comes in for Part 3. You see, I'm not the only one writing this movie. In fact, it's my dad that is also helping me write this movie, specifically the politically realistic parts. You see, not to get political here, but my family is pretty Republican. I myself am more conservative, but I tend to lean to the right a little bit. And because he is Republican, my dad is fully aware that there are power-hungry officials in the legislative branch right now. And there have been for a very long time. You see, half of these senators and governors and representatives in Congress have all risen up from probably being the mayor of their hometown and then slowly climbing up that social ladder because all they seek in life is power, which is what's making this nation fall apart right now. And he says the only way to sort this out is to put term limits on representatives and senators. I mean, look at the current president right now, Joe Biden. He has been a senator for almost his entire life, and he is way too old to be our president because he's been sitting in the same chair since the end of the Cold War. Actually, during that. And that's why he's been there for so long, is because he was seeking political power, and now he has absolutely no idea where he is. But getting back on track here. The character Secretary Daniels in GFE Part 3 is actually an homage to all of these senators and representatives that are still in office seeking power, which is what caused a divide in political parties, toxicity brewing in presidential debates, and even people moving out of California. Well, I live in Texas, so all those people are moving here. So while Godzilla Fallout Extinction is basically telling the story from the short film that ended off the first movie, it is also pointing out the flaws in our government system right now and how they should be fixed. And also pointing out just how corrupt these people are. And even pointing out a theory what could possibly happen if something like this were to actually happen in the United States. Now I doubt there would be any news or media blackouts, because as soon as a monster were to enter a city or something, that news would spread like wildfire, basically collapsing the economy. But what if people do try to seek power from this, making themselves look like the hero while also shaming the others in charge, which is exactly what Secretary Daniels is doing. He created this plan to put all the blame on the US president so he could gain full attention because he lost the election himself. Now this would be very unlikely in the US government because everybody that represents the current US president is part of the same political party, while everyone else in Congress is still divided. The US president in Godzilla Fallout Extinction sort of represents the other political party, while Secretary Daniels represents the opposing political party. And I don't want to throw specifics on which character represents what party, but let's just say, what if Secretary Daniels tends to lean to the left, while the US president leans to the right? In fact, the US president in this movie is mostly modeled after Ronald Reagan, who was a Republican president. Meanwhile, Secretary Daniels gets his attitude based off of Donald Trump, even though Donald Trump is also Republican. But in pop culture, he's actually modeled after the Secretary of Defense from the movie Independence Day, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. But Secretary Daniels is also modeled after Louis Strauss in Oppenheimer, who was a real guy who convicted Oppenheimer, sent him to those kangaroo trials to try and convict him as a communist, saying that he wanted fame from building the atomic bomb. So that is 3 different characters that he's based off of, 2 of which were real people. And one of them is still a real person. I don't know why I said it in the past tense. But I'm just realizing the ridiculous part about all this political realism is that all of this is being represented in Lego form. Like, it's like I'm playing on a child's playset. I'm basically playing with Legos here, while also, like, basically giving the middle finger to the US government. Which I'm not trying to do that, but also I just wanted to give you all a history lesson anyway. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the underlying political tone of what makes Godzilla Fallout Extinction Part 3 so good, while none of you may have even realized that. But hey, it has a happy ending to it, well, at least for the first act, because Secretary Daniels even apologizes to the president for his radical decisions. The president hasn't forgiven him though, at least not yet. But let me tell you, that's not going to be the only time you see political realism in this movie, because at the beginning of Act 2, this is where we get into the UN court in New York City. But hey, no spoilers here, so I'm going to end off this video right here. I hope you enjoyed listening to this, and I hope some of you guys learned something today. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and we will see you all in the next one.